We're here today looking at the reason why we need to lead with our heart, not our head. And that's the thing that I'm passionate about, just because I've seen so many messages and so many people trying to tell us how to behave, trying to tell us what to do, trying to tell us that we'll only be successful if we follow their strategy. And in my experience, that's not true. The truth is that our success, our journey, our rewards in life come when we start connecting with our heart. And today I've got the lovely Katie Powsey with me. And we had a conversation before, and I heard about her views of success. You can see that on another little mini podcast, 3 Minutes to Success. We'll be showing that too. But I wanted to explore with Katie, having listened to her, what her journey is like and how she's discovered to listen to her heart. So, Katie, first of all, thank you very much for coming along today.
Hello, Angela. No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. And when we met, we're both very passionate about the following what's in here, following our hearts and what's in line with our values rather than what we think and following the expectations, whether they might be societal, whether they're cultural expectations or simply the pressure and expectations we put on ourselves because what we think is right or should be right. And yes, so thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Well, let's start there. When did you, or have you always known, I should say, that you're more of a heart-led person, or is it something that's developed and grown for you?
It's definitely something that's developed over the past couple of years, and it's become very clear to me over the past couple of years. And I think the probably easiest way to describe how I came into all this was to share a little bit of my story, where it all started and how it started. And so I come from a background, I'm originally from Slovakia, and I was born, giving my age away now, I was born in 80s, very early 80s. And so at the time it was still a communist country. So there were certain limitations, if you like, if you wanted to succeed in life. So I grew up in a family and in a culture where there was a belief that for anybody to succeed in life, you needed to have education, and the higher the better. So I was growing up in that it was almost pre-decided for me that I would be going to university and getting my master's degree. So I suppose that's where I started the cultural, and it was very much it was led from head rather than heart. And that's how the first part of my life really was. And I didn't realize, because I didn't know any different really at the time. And it was only over the years, the first time I realized I'm a little bit of a rebel was when I finished my master's in business management, and I got my master's degree, and my life was pretty much already planned out for me. I was working as apprentice in a particular bank where I was offered a role when I finished my studies as an apprentice bank manager. And it was pretty much, I felt like my whole life was already planned out for me without me having any say in it. So I decided that I'm going to travel for a little bit before I actually commit to anything and decide what I want to do with my life. And that's when my family, very wonderful, by the way, I've got an amazing relationship with my family, but they followed what they believed was right because that's how they grew up. So they were very firm, and they said, look, we understand you're your own person and this is what you want to do. But if that's what you choose to do, we will not support you financially. So I remember I had £60 in my bank as a student. And the last little bit of money I had, I bought a ticket to England, a coach ticket, because I didn't have enough money to pay for the flight. So I got a coach. And I thought, no, I'm doing this. I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to try and go into the big world and figure out what life is about and what I actually want from life. And nobody actually believed I was going to do it. Nobody was trying to convince me to not to do it because they didn't think I was actually going to go ahead with it. And to be fair, to a degree, I sort of surprised myself too when I found myself on that couch in that moment thinking, right, okay, well, what am I going to do now? There's no going back. I certainly didn't have enough money to get the ticket back. So it was literally one-way ticket. And that's how it really started. That's when I realized that I am very much led from heart, and it kind of developed over the years. And the biggest, I would say, the biggest moment of my life was a couple of years ago. It was 24, so we're going back 6 years ago. So 2017, so nearly 7 years ago, actually. I remember this morning, it's the memory is as clear as yesterday. It was a Monday morning, end of January 2017, and I get out, come downstairs, and make my usual cup of coffee. And as I'm looking around, I'm thinking to myself, life is pretty amazing. At the time, my oldest one was nearly 7, and we've not long ago had a baby girl, which was a blessing because we've gone through a really heartbreaking miscarriage, very difficult pregnancy. So, and all of a sudden she was here, this little bundle of joy, attitude, and sassy already. We already knew she was going to cause waves wherever she goes. And the love between the two of them, the bond between brother and a little princess, it was just incredible. So as a mother, I just felt this incredible pride and joy. And we've just had our planning permission approved for extending a home. So we were about to create a forever dream family home. And to top it off, I have managed to negotiate with my employer at the corporate company that I was working for at the time, that after maternity leave, I could return to a senior position on a part-time basis. This was never done in that particular company before. It was a case of if people wanted to step down to part-time positions, they had to go through like a demotion, if you like. So the senior positions weren't available at the time. So I'm thinking life is pretty amazing. Life is great. It couldn't really get any better. Only my husband came home from work that night and he told me that he's been having an affair, and my life, just like that, I tend to set flashes. And after all sorts of different emotions going through, the biggest one I couldn't get over was confusion. I was confused as to how, why, how could this even happen? When did this happen? How, what's gone wrong? And then when the dust settled a little bit and I started looking at I started overanalyzing reasons, I come up with one, and I thought, I know what it is. It's definitely, it's got to be, it's my work. I'm a workaholic. I worked too much. I dedicated too much time to my success. Therefore, it's got to be my career that's caused all these issues and everything. So I've decided to completely give up my career. I resigned in a hope that it will keep the family together. It will save the marriage. Didn't help. So now I'm in a situation where I'm a single mum with 2 children. One of them is only a few months old. And I've got no home, no career, and decided that I was still adamant that it was the career that was the issue. So I've decided to spend as much time with the family and with the children as I possibly could. So what I did, I started looking for jobs that would offer me the flexibility, so I will only work the hours when children were with their dad. But because these were minimum wage jobs, at one point I had 3 jobs on a go, working double shifts, triple shifts, just to keep afloat. So what then happened was, and you probably can see where this is going, I've experienced a complete and utter burnout, physical, emotional. And what I've realized is I had no career. I reached a point where I felt like a complete and utter failure. I felt like I failed as a career person. I've had no career. I failed as a wife. But most of all, I felt like I failed as a mum, because even though I had all that time with my children, I wasn't present when I was there. And it took me a very long time, looking back, to understand what actually really happened and understand that it wasn't my career and it wasn't the job. It was how I looked at my career and the job, because it was not in line with my values. It was not in line with my heart. When I became a mum, I started feeling guilty for the fact that I still wanted a career. So I made up this story in my head, and I made the excuse that I'm doing it for my family, which, of course, when we pursue our goals and dreams, it is for the benefit of our family and children and everybody around us. But that wasn't the main reason. And because I wasn't able to be honest with myself, and open up my heart and be brave enough to stand up and say, look, I'm a mum, but I am also passionate about pursuing my dreams and goals. So it was only years later when I've experienced both sides, when I did have the career, which was very much head led. And then now, where I'm in the situation now, where I'm pursuing my dreams and goals, and I no longer feel guilty for the fact that I am in pursuit of success, because it is now coming from my heart. And I now have learned to stand up and say, yes, I am building my business. I am working towards success, and I'm super proud of that. I'm not shying away from it, because I've learned to understand that it doesn't make me less of a mum or worse parent, just because I want something for myself too. So I suppose that's probably how the whole heart versus head kind of, where it became very, very clear to me. So it's, yeah, like I said, the rebellious side of me that probably has always been there. But it really did become very clear to me that unless whatever we do in life, whether it's career orientated, whether it's personal stuff, if it's not in line with what we believe in and what we stand for and our values, it will then become a struggle, and it will then lead us to the point where guilt may creep in, and
Sorry.
yeah, and we'll
Sorry.
be chasing things that we don't actually even know what for. Are we doing it for us, or is it because it's the expectations of the outside world?
It's both fascinating and heartrending and inspiring to listen to your story, Katie. So thank you very much for sharing it with us, because our listeners may well be going through that kind of a struggle, thinking, can I do both? I mean, you've touched on something that for many women can be a huge problem. Many women can end up taking jobs just because it fits in with the hours of school, not because there's anything in it that brings them joy, but because they need to earn an income and they want to be with their children. And so what can they do that sort of matches it? So that can end up in a spiral of unfulfillment, a spiral of being tired and still feeling guilty because you're not, things in the home need to be done. And actually, you want to be spending time with your children when they're at home. And then there's all these jobs that need doing. So many women carry a lot of guilt. Many women try to hide it. They try to sort of squash it down, justify it. But you know, what you're sharing is that it's never wrong to pursue your dreams and to find fulfillment in what you do. And it can do it at the same time. And
Yeah.
it's sort of, you know, it touches part of my life. And I was very blessed because we made a decision to home educate our two younger children, not from a really brilliant reason that we discovered home education, but because our third son was very badly bullied at school, and we thought, we can't do this to him. He's being destroyed by the people who are supposed to be protecting him. And moving into home education meant that I could pursue a career myself, but also be very present for my children, which was such a gift. So, you know, hearing that you're able to do that is fantastic. And I applaud you also, because the thing is, your children, what a lovely, inspirational journey you're taking them on as they see their mum being fulfilled by what she does. What more would we want for our children than that they are fulfilled in,
Yeah.
you know, in wherever they go? So what do they think about what you're doing? What do your children, do they know much about it? Do they ask you about it? Or is it just kind of like, that's mum?
It's a really, really good question, actually, because there is a bit of an age difference between my children. So Joshua, he's 14 and a half, going on 40. So he's very much like the quiet supporter. So I can tell that he asks certain questions sometimes. So he's a little bit interested, but he's trying to keep it cool, and he's trying to not to ask too many questions, because he's just going through that phase of being a teenager. But it is incredible how it has impacted over the past couple of years, both of them. And the younger one, she's going to be 8 in the next couple of weeks. And she is my little biggest supporter. She constantly asks what you're up to today, what you're doing today. When we create a content for social media, she absolutely loves to get involved. She's become more of a face of the social media than I am. And she's just this little bundle of joy. And she came up to me recently and she said to me, Mummy, I'm going to have my own business when I'm grown up. I'm not too sure what's going to be yet. I'm toying, she's split between, she loves animals. So I'm split between selling something for pets, or maybe even pets or pet toys, or I might have a shop where I'll be selling building materials. I mean, you know, the other part of my professional journey was the property world, and so that's probably where she got it from. So but it's the fact that she has come up to me and said, I will have my own business one day, Mummy, and that's incredible. But even my son, even though he doesn't share a lot with me or as much with me as he used to, I still see the impact it has on him, because he's very passionate about football. And he started a little bit later when he was playing football. So he wasn't a typical toddler. And as soon as he started to walk, he was around the ball. I think he was only about 6, 7 years old when he started playing football, which is, in football years for some, they say it's quite late in comparison to some of the other children. But he was never quite brave enough to share with us and say, this is what I really want to do. This is what I'm passionate about. And it's almost like he was possibly a little bit afraid that he was going to let us down, because he felt that he's not really academic and school is not necessarily, there are particular subjects at school that he really enjoys, and then there are some that it's just not him. And he really felt like, because he didn't have the grades overall, or those results at school, he did feel like he was failing us to a degree. And it was only over the last couple of years when I've really seen the difference. He really started pursuing his football dream. And actually, very proud moment, 2 months ago, he was accepted to an elite football league where he's going to be starting training with them from September. So it was a great moment for him. So I'd like to think that the fact that I have decided to pursue my dreams and goals and be open and honest about it, and of course include them in everything I do, has had the impact. And whether I can take a full credit for it, I'm not too sure, but I do hope that some of it has come from being that role model and showing them that we don't have to necessarily do things in the traditional way. There are different ways to be successful. So again, going back to the academic thing, showing my son and helping him understand that there's no reason for you to beat yourself up about the fact that you might not have the grades that you like, because if that's not something you want to pursue and you're not passionate about, as long as I've always said to him, as long as you treat people with respect, you behave yourself in a classroom and do the best you can on the day, whatever the results are, they're what they are. But if you show up as your best version, and the most importantly, the respect and the kindness towards others, you can't go wrong in life. So hopefully they'll see and they will reap the rewards of what I'm hoping to inspire and show them that there is a big world out there for them, and they just need to go and get it.
Yeah, and I love that. And the thing is, for if we start with our heart and we start with our children and those who depend upon us, and we start successfully leading them from our hearts, successfully showing them that that's what really matters, then that's the start of our leadership journey. It's always going to be the people that we care the most about that will have the biggest impact on. And even if somebody's watching this and you don't want to go out there and be on social media and change the world, there are people in your life that you will change and that you will impact, you will affect. I had a very similar upbringing in the sense of education was really important to my parents. My dad had to pay for himself to go to university because his dad didn't believe in all of that. That was, you need to get out there and start earning the first possible minute that you could. So he he went out, he learned, he did as best as he could in the apprenticeship and so on that he took. But his heart was to teach. His heart was to go to university. So he was about 30 when he actually had managed to save enough money to pay for himself. So his utter conviction was that all of his children, and there were 8 of us, would go to university. So literally from the minute we could understand what he was saying, he was talking about our education would never finish till we were at least 21. And that's how we grew up. So it was just sort of, okay, well, we're going to get a degree. But my heart at the age of 16 told me that I needed to join the police, which doesn't even sound like a heart-led thing, actually, when I say that to people. But if you knew me then as the little girl who had always played with dolls, who didn't like sport, in fact, hated it, you would not have thought that I would join the police. But my heart was telling me that's what you need to do. And so I went to university because that was expected. And then I joined the police. And I discovered how to listen to my heart when I was dealing with people who I'd arrested or charged with something. And that it doesn't, the two things don't necessarily go hand in hand to people. But the difference in the reaction you get from somebody who you're treating with respect, even though you're charging them with an offense, to the point where they'll say thank you at the end of it. That was always my goal, was I need to treat them in a way that they'll say thank you to me. And when you allow yourself to treat people like that, everything changes. It all shifts. And that role became a very inspiring role for me, and it sort of set various standards in my life going forward. So listening to you saying that your children are being allowed to connect with that thing inside of them that's most important will help and encourage them to become the people that they're supposed to be, rather than looking over their shoulder, feeling that they're constantly letting a parent down. And that in itself, if that's your goal and achievement, and I just want to say that because many mums can feel like they haven't succeeded. If that's where you're succeeding, that is inspirational. It's fantastic. You've no idea what your children will achieve and who they'll touch in life. So going forward, how about other people in your life now? The family, you said you're close to your family. How do they feel about your choices?
So there's still they don't necessarily quite understand, is probably the best word to use, the world I've gone into in terms of the mindset coaching. And because again, it's just their beliefs, what they grew up in. So it's not something that they would kind of almost say, well, is that a job? So, but what I have learned and what helped me through the personal growth and self-development, and again, so when we're talking about the heart versus head, it's not necessarily always about our heart. It's also being respectful and understanding that what I am passionate about and what I in my heart believe to be right. And this is the thing, is that there's no right or wrong, right? It's just we just believe in different things. We have got different passions and different values. So when I started to understand that it's not personal, so when they don't quite understand and they're not maybe as encouraging in a way that I perhaps expected them to be or thought they would be, it's okay, because I understand why it is difficult for them to understand it. And I understand that they're coming from a slightly different place and their heart is somewhere different. Their heart is somewhere else. So we will have conversations about it, and they are slowly coming around the idea now. And they probably still don't quite see the actual nitties and gritties of what I do. But because they see how it makes me feel and how it brought all of our family together, they're really appreciative of it, and they've become very supportive. There were times when the relationships were quite strained, especially with my parents, my mum and dad. I always had the greatest respect for them, but the relationship hasn't always been the strongest, in a sense that we would a lot of times have a very different views on things, and we would not necessarily agree. And a lot of times it would lead to frustrations, and there would be sometimes periods when we would perhaps not talk as often, just because we didn't feel comfortable and we were worried about those awkward conversations coming up. And now, when I look at us now, I've learned to accept that they are who they are. They have got their own set of beliefs. And I've learned, like I said, I've learned it's not personal. It's not aimed at me. It's not because I'm doing something right or wrong or should or shouldn't be doing. And we just, so now when we get together, there's no pressure, there's no expectations. We just enjoy and really, truly enjoy spending times together. And even talk about things that we don't necessarily agree on, but we make a joke about it. We turn it into a bit of a laughter and a giggle, and we do it lightheartedly rather than treating it as end of the world kind of scenarios. And I think this was the biggest learn for me, is learn to respect that not everybody will have the same views as I have, and that's perfectly okay. It doesn't make it right or it doesn't make it wrong. It's just, it's their own little map of the world versus my map of the world. And so in terms of my family, even they are now kind of, that one of the things is that when I get quite caught up in certain things, perhaps I don't make a call as often. Of course, then being in Slovakia, we don't get to always see each as often as we'd like. So we try to make up for it with the regular phone calls. And there will be times when sometimes I sleep up and I'm thinking, oh dear, I haven't spoken to mum and dad in 2 weeks. So first thing, there's, I know I'm in I know I'm in a doghouse when they answer the call. Oh, you do exist. But we then turn it into a joke and we have a bit of a laugh, and then I'll run them through what my few weeks have been like, and they're like, yeah, okay, we see where you're coming from. So it's give and take, isn't it? And yeah, I understand that they were brought up with a completely different views and in a different culture and different environment. And we have learned to respect that, but I would have never had that unless I was able to step out of myself almost and start looking at things a little bit differently. So like I said, it's not necessarily always about our hearts, it's having that respect and understanding of the others. Exactly like when you said about when you were arresting people and still treated them with respect, because we all have been on the different paths and we've never walked in other people's shoes. So it's very different. It's that being non-judgmental, isn't it? It's kind of accepting that, yes, this is what's happened, but leaving the judgments aside and just treating it as it is what it is, and how we're going to move forward with these situations. But drop the judgment. And I think that's one of the biggest ones, isn't it? That it's not always easy. We do tend to, we can easily slip into the little bit of snarky little comments and little judgments. And, we're all human. We all get there every now and then. But as long as it doesn't become something that's habitual, something we find ourselves doing on a regular basis, then
Yes.
that maybe a few things need to change. Definitely.
Yes, and that you've touched again on something there, that's, if you think about the heart and the head, when you start connecting with your heart, that allows you to recognize your own weaknesses as well as your strengths. And sometimes your weaknesses can become your strengths, but you need to identify what they are first, and you need to actually discover how do they affect you? How do they make you feel? How do they make other people feel? Because sometimes our weaknesses can make other people feel awkward. If you allow yourself to do that and get out of your head, you'll find that judgment side of us, which, as you said, we're all human. Of course, there's going to be times when our immediate reaction is, I wouldn't do that, or whatever, or my child's never going to do that. That's the typical one as a parent. You see this poor mum with, 3 children doing something, in the shop, and you're like, well, I wouldn't let my child do that. And then but you've not been there, and just wait till you get there. And it's so easy for your head to immediately say, not, I'm not going to do that. But if we connect with our heart and ask ourselves truly, how do we feel? How do we think? How do we make other people feel? How do our actions impact those around us? Then it begins to be a much deeper connection that you can build with people. And the true leader who can lead from the heart is always going to have a view on their impact on the people around them, their view, on the way that how they behave affects other people. And for me, looking back, it was the inspector in the police who cared about me. who saw me as a whole person, who wouldn't let me, for example, when they were going to send me to a sudden death of a child, he contacted the people in the office and said, no, please, can you send such a person? Because he knew that as yet I had never had a child. And he just was compassionate towards me, that on my own, that would have been the first time I had dealt with that, and I would have been on my own. He felt that that wasn't something he wanted to put me in yet. He didn't feel I was quite ready for it. And there was another policewoman who was absolutely incensed. To her, it was like, that's, just because you're a woman, blah, all of this, that can't be right. But he was acting from his heart. He was leading from his heart in that moment what was right for me as a young policewoman. And I valued and respected it. And it moved me very much. Whereas there were other, leaders who were literally head driven, and you respected them because they were senior officers. You had to do what they said, but I didn't have that relationship with them. I never had a connection, and the respect. I shall we say this is I would notice their faults, and I would struggle with them more than the other one who, yes, of course he had his faults, but there was well, okay, but he's just human, and it's a really interesting. I think if you look at the leadership of the country down the centuries, not necessarily the recent change, but if you look at leaders, traditional leaders, and ask yourself, which ones do you most respect? And really ask yourself in your heart, which ones do you most respect? For me, it's always the people who are willing enough to accept their mistakes and say sorry, and, show that they have a compassion and empathy for the world, rather than just a dictatorial, do this, do that, do the other. Did you see a big change? Just going back to you said you were born into a communist country. Did you see a big change as all of that shifted?
Yes, it was quite surreal because it was kind of, I think it was 1989 when the regime fell, and it was 1993 when we split. So we used to be a Czechoslovakia, and 1993 we split as two separate countries. So there was a lot of big changes in a very short space of time, in a couple of years, and it was almost like overnight. I remember it that there was, when we were still part of a communist country, there was actual exact words how we were supposed to say and address our teachers, for example. And literally overnight, from next week, when we got to school next day, when there was no longer a communist system, we were no longer allowed to address them in that way. So that was the first thing I've noticed as a 9-year-old. Hold on a minute, I've been at school now for however many years. I've been addressing my teachers in a certain way because you've told me that's how I'm supposed to be doing it. And all of a sudden, just like that, it's Monday morning, and now you're telling us, by the way, you are no longer allowed to address us as this. So it was almost that, I know that was a new era. I know there was a lot of new changes, and it was all for the better in certain ways. But I think because they were trying so hard to completely cut all the ties with the previous regime, it was just this like all or nothing kind of thing. There was no sort of gradual, and especially for a child, I remember being really confused. And then we also had, as a part of, we had this, I'm not too sure what it's called, there's probably a name for it, when you've got like these different relationships with different schools in two different countries, like Czech and Slovakia. And they would have like this changeover in students. So they would come and stay in a family for a week and study in our school for a week, and then would go to their country and study in their school for a week and stayed with the family there. And I was absolutely devastated because it was my turn when I was going to be the student of next year, when it was supposed to happen. And it was, at the time, to us, it was the highlight of the primary and secondary school was this exchange kind of thing. And they said, no, we're no longer doing it. And I remember feeling so heartbroken. I thought, I've been waiting for this for so many years. And now that I'm here, no, we're not doing it. So there was a lot of great changes, of course, which, like with anything, it's good and bad, isn't it? But I just felt, for me, that it was a very drastic almost like, because it was part of the previous thing, we're going to dismiss everything because it was linked to that previous thing. So I feel that there was a lot of good stuff that we could have taken away from the previous regime and could apply, rather than go full in. We head in West, we're going to be like all the big Western countries, and it's great to follow the leaders, if you like, and it's great to follow certain things, but not at the expense of completely giving up everything good that we had at the same time as well. So that's how it felt like to me at the time. It was just like this to a child. It was like, I'm not too sure whether I'm coming or going right now. Like, you've taught me and drilled into me over and over and over for many years how life should be, what we should be doing, what we should be saying. And now you're trying to tell me that it's all wrong. I have to erase everything and I'm just going to have to learn new things. It was difficult for a child. And I really respected my granddad because he was a very strong believer. And what I've really admired him to the very last day, until the moment he died, he 100% stuck by what he believed. He never changed his beliefs and his views depending on what political party was in charge, how we changed the regimes, what's changed. To him, he stuck by, he had his belief and he stood by them right to the very end. So he was a real inspiration to me, in a sense that, yes, there are circumstances outside that we don't have control over, and things will change and life will change. But as long as we continue to do what is in line with our core values and what we believe in and what we stand for, then again, it's one of those things that we can't really go wrong. So having said that, now actually, that's probably where the heart rather than the head was coming from. Even though my granddad, for those who knew him, they would think that he's a very logical person, and he was quite high up within the corporate world. So to a degree, he was very head leveled, if you like. But deep down, everything was led from heart, if that makes sense. So that's probably where, actually, looking back now, that's where it really comes from a very young age, from spending and hanging around with my nan and granddad, because I did spend more time with them at certain years of my life than with my parents. It's just, yeah. So that's probably where it all started, really.
Well, and it's interesting to look back and think that at the time, somebody might think that he was led more by his head, but actually the values, those core values that he gave you, was to really go with what you believed deeply. And it didn't have to be the same as he believed, but it did need to be, what was right for you. And from that aspect, my dad, yes, he wanted to sort of the education. We didn't really have a choice about that. And for one of my sisters, that was a big problem. But at the same time, what he really wanted was for us to achieve our very best. That was his desire for us. And he gave us, the thing he inspired most was that you never stop learning till the day you die. You keep on growing, you keep on developing. And that's a core value of mine. And I'm very glad to have it. So I think we can go back and look at those things. And it's obviously given you a strength that you might not have had otherwise. So just before we finish, I would love to know, so that the listeners can find out exactly, how do you help your clients and where can they find you if they would like to have a chat with you?
Thank you. So I work as a life and mindset coach, but it is specifically, as you probably can gather, is very much helping my clients, or helping, not necessarily helping, working with them, because helping would mean that we're helpless and we're not. We all have the answers in us. So it's more guiding. So the clients I work with is through that navigation of the life balance to finding the harmony, shifting that guilt. And like what we've pretty much talked about here most is the rediscovering our true identities. So again, taking us back to the heart. And I do that in various ways. So I work with clients through one-to-one private coaching sessions, but I also have an online memberships, different stages and different packages for online memberships that offer the clients that little bit more flexibility. So if they perhaps, it might not necessarily be able to afford the full private coaching sessions. So it's affordable, and also what it allows them the flexibility to get into the coaching and get some guidance in their own time at their own pace. So the flexibility for the online memberships. And exciting news is that, fingers crossed, we're hoping within the next week or 2 weeks, the website should be fully launched. So for now, it's either through Facebook as KP Life Coaching, or at Instagram at KP Life Coaching, or on LinkedIn under Katie Powsey. But yes, fingers crossed, keep your eyes peeled. The launch of the website is pretty much imminent, fingers crossed.
And you'll be, I'm sure, sharing that website on your social media channels. So if somebody
Yes.
connects with you, you'll be giving everybody the details. And of course, later on, when this is published, if the website isn't quite ready, you can always add the details of that later on. So if you're watching and anything that Katie said has just made you think a little bit about your journey and moving forward, and really getting to a place where you can achieve your dreams, whatever's going on in your life, whatever is happening around you, and also that there's never a wrong time to start. So it doesn't matter what's going on in your life. If there's something inside of you that's growing, that's burning, that's driving you, that you're thinking like, if I don't do this, I'm going to burst, then speak out, speak up, talk to me, talk to Katie. Let us help you to find that step forward that will take you closer to the person that you really want to be, to the person that you know you're fully capable of. That's probably hiding beneath the surface, because the world needs you. The world needs those who will lead from their heart more than ever it has before. So I look forward to talking with you, look forward to sharing this with you. Thank you very much for coming along, Katie. It's been a privilege to talk to you and hear your journey and your story.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much, Angela, for having me. Yeah, it was my privilege. I felt it was my privilege, so thank you.